Hello, friends. It's Chapo.
Matt, was it like the players get to the games on time and they run plays and they win? I don't understand how that's possible without an owner.
Matt, you brought this up when we were talking about the other day. Can you talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Oh, yeah. The Toronto Maple Leafs, until relatively recently, were majority owned by the Ontario State Teachers Pension Fund.
And that is that's like the original franchise in the NHL.
Yeah,
that was one of the most storied teams in hockey.
And in fact, they sold it a few years ago, but they are also the main investor in the Hudson Yards project. In Manhattan.
Excellent. Great.
The giant, the
gyro structure.
Yeah, the gyro structure that everyone hates.
Curious about this, but are there any teams that are just like listed on a stock exchange? Like anyone could just snap it up?
I don't think there are any. I don't think they can be structured that way because all of it is all on the contingent of like antitrust exemptions that they are allowed. Right.
I mean, like the other thing I wanted to bring up, and like we were just in Las Vegas and like saw a probably the best example of this with our own eyes. Really, if you want to talk about it from like a leftist perspective, one of the most nauseating things about professional sports is the construction of stadiums with municipal funds.
Oh my God!
And it is just for every single city that gets sucked into this. It is always such a fucking boondoggle, and they always like promise, "Oh, we're going to create all these jobs and shit," and it's like, where they create like a couple hundred like service jobs, and then like the construction jobs to build it. But the worst example of this new Raiders stadium that they just built in Vegas, apparently they call it like the Darth Vader because it just literally looks like a stormtrooper helmet and all in black. It's like $800 million of taxpayer money built that stadium. I think the city of Las Vegas footed the entire bill.
But then they don't get any equity in the team. That's the worst deal you could possibly make.
So if you're going to build these stadiums,
I will buy you a thing, and then I get no part of the team.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, build the stadiums if you want to attract tourists or a fan base. Then you should own the team. The city should own the team at that point.
Obviously, Chris knows. In Cincinnati, Mike Brown, one of the worst, cheapest owners there is, he squeezed the Hamilton County so bad that they ended up paying almost entirely $500 million for a stadium, for the Paul Brown Stadium. And they've got a bunch of clauses in the contract that keep them on the hook. For example, they've got this giant Jumbotron, right? Like, they're all very proud of their Jumbotrons.
We love our big screens, folks.
It's in the contract that if another stadium in the NFL gets a bigger Jumbotron, then the Hamilton County has to pay for the upgrade.
Hang on, so that means every other team owner in the country basically has total control over the fate of Cincinnati.
Yes.
Like they could at will, just using their own fortune, bankrupt the people of Cincinnati.
Yeah, bankrupt the public school system of Cincinnati by building a bigger Jumbotron.
Yeah, well, it's the size of the stadium.
Well, but then we'd still have the biggest screen, folks. Number one, biggest screen,
and the tourism of people coming to witness
to just see the screen. All hail the screen.
And like the Vegas Raiders stadium is even more abominable because like there are no fucking Raiders fans in Las Vegas. I mean, I guess they just want people traveling to the games, which was going to happen, 16 games in an NFL season, 7 games a year in that stadium?
That's the most monstrous thing about the NFL stadiums that are just for that game. You're talking about 7 or 8 games, maybe more if there's a playoff run, a year.
Right.
That means that the thing hypothetically sits empty for over 350 days a year.
Well, I mean, let's not say. I mean, they still have some municipal benefit as being a staging center for, let's say, a military incursion to the city. Or
these are very useful Jade Helm staging areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
I gotta say, the last 20 years of stadium building has really made me very nostalgic for the old 70s style municipal donut. There's only one left, the Coliseum in Oakland, where it's like a concrete poured structure, not fancy. It's got an artisanal bistro in the second deck, or it's got like real marble, or it's got like a brownstone. It looks like Eppett's Field. No, just a big concrete donut, and they play football and baseball.
Yep.
And there's tractor pulls every other weekend.
And when Styx comes to town, they play there.
Plays there, yes. And it's a hockey rink in the winter, and there's always something happening. And that I would be down with if it was part of like a complex that was owned by the city, and the teams were also owned by the city. Now we're talking.
And they all had that cool brutalist architecture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Building the Raiders Stadium actually is a good segue because that is Ballers Season 3. And I want to talk about the plot of Ballers Season 1 as a Ballers fan.
You and Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, I know. So You mentioned it a few times the thing about how the average career for an NFL player, for like the rank and file NFL player, is what, like 3.5 years, something like that, maybe even less. The premise of Ballers is that The Rock it starts out as he's a wealth and business manager for football players, and then later it goes on to him like personally buying the Cowboys or some shit. But it made me. It's a really interesting thing to think about because you have the situation where you have an opportunity of maybe a few years to make, as you were saying, not if you're not a name player, not even a tremendous amount of money, but a couple $100,000 over like 4 years,
Right.
and that is like the career you've been working towards your entire life. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, what do you and your other colleagues feel about is like how that sets you up for like forward planning in life and how that affects how you think about the world around you and like politics and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's for me, I think it has to be something where it has to be a staging for the rest of your life. Like it has to be a prerequisite kind of to catapult you to something else in your life because it's such a short amount of time and such a short period period of your work life. It has to be something that it's not. I think that's why a lot of just athletes in general, but particularly NFL players, go broke once they're done playing is because they're used to making this money and then spending the money like they're going to be making it the rest of their life, but you're not. So you have to be incredibly intelligent about it. But it's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. A lot of players struggle with. They don't have a lot of financial literacy coming into the league, and then a lot of these people come from very poor, working class, lower middle class backgrounds, and then you're thrust all this money, and then all of a sudden you're just spending it willy nilly. But you have to understand that there's not a lot of job security in this. Your contract's not guaranteed, all this type of stuff. So if anything happens, you hurt yourself, you can't play anymore, or you have to sit out a year. All that stuff affects you, affects your life, affects your finances. So you just have to be more prepared to, make your money while you're in it. And then once you have to save, you have to just be ready to move on to another path. And that's what, for me, that's why I have a lot of other interests that I'm trying to explore because I know this isn't forever.
Posting.
Posting, right? being a part of the Twitter army for Bernard Sanders in the post wars.
You mentioned fighting for guaranteed lifetime health care.
Yeah.
Like that would be like one of the most important things, I guess, and considering what we are beginning to really first time realize about what football does to the human body and brain.
I think it's like a big tobacco thing. And
Yeah.
they've just known it for decades and suppressed the
probably.
information.
Probably.
Definitely.
But at the same time, though, I mean, like, again, you want to talk about connection to Bernie Sanders and political issues, like Medicare for all, it's the same thing.
Same thing.
It's like, it's that security. And when you talk about, football, I know a lot of people are asking themselves the question right now, if I had a son, even though this game's giving me so much and I love it so much, would I let him play football? Given what we know about it. But the thing is, like you said, you have one shot at it. It's like 3 or 4 years, maybe like more if you're lucky to have like a really good career. It's sort of like, even if it's like literally subtracting years off your life, how can you tell someone who's done this their entire life, it's the thing they love the most, that, not to take the opportunity to play it at its highest level, to experience that. And again, like I think that would be it's like the hardest question to answer, and I think that would be a much less like kind of savage choice to offer someone if there was something like guaranteed healthcare, either as a player or just for every citizen in this country, guaranteed healthcare your entire life. Like it'd be a more honest or like a fairer choice to make.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like you said, there's a lot of parallels to Bernie's plan. Whereas, like, as an employee, right, if I lose my job, well, do I lose my health care, right? Even if my union fought for it, if I'm not a part of that union anymore, I'm not part of the NFL anymore, not because of injury, just because of whatever, well, I don't have health care anymore, right? And that's exactly what the culinary union members saw through with their leadership and what they were trying to do. And I think it's really a decision that every single athlete has to make, and football players especially. There have been guys that have retired early for fear of head injuries, or they just they were done with the game and they didn't want to risk it anymore. I've been very grateful enough I've never had a concussion even playing the sport or the position that I play.
I mean, yeah, you're a running back. That's like the shortest career in the
Right,
NFL.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I've been very lucky, but And I think a lot of, the people, my good friends on the team and stuff have talked about, like, once, if I start, experiencing neck issues, back issues, whatever, like, and I feel like it's going to affect the rest of my life, well, then I'm done. I'm done because it's really not worth, once it's run its course, and it's not worth kind of putting yourself out there and risking the rest of your life anymore.
Yeah. And you're fortunate enough that you have options such as posting, whereas a lot of guys don't.
Right.
So yeah, if you're another NFL player listening on this right now, just get on Twitter. Start getting those memes out there. Get blocked by near tandem.
It's a proven record now. Build up your followers. Start a podcast.
Yeah, there we go. Justin Jackson, I want to thank you so much for joining us.